Hello, my name is Andrew, and today we're doing a first look review of the all-new Lono VERVE. Up front, it's got a wide toe box, squared off on the inside, and then a little bit of taper on the outside. There is some very lightweight tape that runs all the way around the sole, so if you're walking or running through wet grass or mud, it does a good job of keeping moisture out of the bottom of the shoe. But then the upper of the VERVE is really breathable. It lets through a lot of air. It kind of reminds me of the Wildly Tanuki, except it's got this crazy like Spider-Man webbing going on, which makes it more durable while still keeping the shoe super lightweight. And then up top you've got flat laces, which create a really nice lockdown. If I open the shoe way up, you can see there's actually this kind of like half sock liner there, and it's sort of stretchy, so that adds another layer of security. So I found the VERVE to have kind of like a sock fit, and you can wear it barefoot if you want, because the inner sides are fairly soft and the inner webbing isn't particularly abrasive, although I usually prefer merino wool socks, just have a natural material against my skin, and because toe socks in particular add a little bit more airflow. Anyways, the VERVE has this really nice cushion that runs around the ankle, and it's good for lockdown, but it also just provides a bit of padding. And for barefoot shoes, I really like this style of minimal ankle because there's nothing rubbing here. Sometimes barefoot shoes have a little bit too hard material right up against the top of your bone, and it can create blisters. But another interesting feature Lono added is this flippable back tab. I wasn't sure what to think of it at first because when you put it up, you can kind of feel it on the back of your skin a little bit. But then when I was out for a trail run, I realized that when you have it flipped up, it prevents stones from kicking up into the shoe, which can be really annoying. Although if you find you don't like the feeling of it, you can just flip it down like that. Also for insoles, holy moly, Lono included 3 different pairs. I'm not sure if the final shoe will have this many, but they gave me a really light pair. This is probably what I would use on most runs. I found that I could use them without insoles, but my feet are really callous, so I think just having a tiny bit of padding is nice with a shoe like this that has a bit more aggressive lugs that you might feel otherwise. But they've also got a slightly thicker foam insole, as well as a natural cork, which is probably what I would use if I was going on some really gnarly terrain and I just needed a bit of extra protection. One thing that would be great for Lono to add though is an insole that had some perforation in it, because although the upper of the VERVE is really breathable, I found that if water splashed over the top or I went wading through a creek, the water just kind of got trapped in the shoe because of that tape that runs around the outside. This isn't necessarily something Lono has to fix, it's just a matter of like, what do you want the shoe to be good for? Like if they're mostly thinking of it as a faster paced trail shoe for maybe like really hot weather and a little bit of water, then the combo of mesh and tape makes a lot of sense. But if they're intending the VERVE to be something that's going to get really wet, then they should probably add some perforation on the side just so there's drainage points. But basically the hack that I came up with after going through a creek is just to hold my feet upside down like I was doing a quad stretch, and most of the water would just drain straight out the top of the shoe. Also, one last note about the upper, it is stitched in the front, which is kind of cool. I've never seen a barefoot brand do a half stitch like this, but I do think the stitching should extend at least to this point because this is the key stress area of most barefoot shoes. So yeah, either they could do a little more stitching or they could add their notch, which the Lono Flow has. That works really well because it takes some stress off the bend point. For the sole, it's 10 millimeters, so a little bit thicker, but it does not feel like a 10 millimeter barefoot sole at all. Part of that is because the aggressive lugs take up a lot of the thickness. So if I bend the outside of the shoe, you can see that the shoe is really bendy, whereas the inside has more protection. And that's a really great idea for trail running and fast hiking because you get a nice soft landing on the outside of your forefoot, but then you've got the carbon plate in the middle of the shoe for protection against sharp rocks. Also, another interesting thing about the carbon plate is that if you look at the website, you can see that they've actually cut like separate toes into it, so that adds some more flexibility in the front of the shoe, whereas if it was just one solid piece, it might get kind of stiff. But yeah, the grip is really good going up muddy hills, and although it's not as aggressive as something like Vivo Barefoot's SG tread, the VERVE actually tends to stay cleaner because it doesn't trap as much mud in there. In terms of road running, the sole is kind of overkill, and with less surface area, the lugs will wear down a little faster on abrasive terrain like that, but it's fine if you're just doing a mile or 2 at a time. Generally, I found the tread to be really protective and grippy going on rocks or even curved surfaces like logs, although like most aggressive treads, if you're going on a flat, slippery surface like a wet boardwalk, you do want to be careful because there just isn't as much surface area to create friction. In terms of agility, the VERVE feels really light and snappy for fast hiking and trail running, although the carbon plate does take away some ground feel, and it's not quite as flexible as thinner barefoot shoes. Alright, so that's my first impression review of the new Lono VERVE, but if you'd like to support the channel, you can shop with the referral links down below, browse and filter more products with the shoe finder tool at my website barefootwear.org, or watch my zero drop transition video to learn more about barefooting. Finally, if you have a question about the Lono VERVE or about barefoot shoes in general, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, catch you next time, peace!